Before we had massive open worlds and hyper-realistic graphics, we had a guy in white pajamas trying his best not to get turned into a kebab by a spike trap. Jordan Mechner's original Prince of Persia was amazing. And all amazing things, well, they get clones. So today, we're taking a look at 15 insanely good 2D Prince of Persia clones that's worth playing. Let's dive right in, shall we? Flashback, 1992. When I talk about Flashback, I'm talking about the moment. I realized games could be cinematic. It felt light years ahead of its time. Here, Conrad B. Hart is an agent who has lost his memory and finds himself stranded on Titan. It's basically a futuristic game show where the prize is a ticket back to Earth, and the penalty for losing is, well, death. Conrad has a shield and a pistol, but don't let that fool you into thinking it's a run-and-gun shooter. If you try to play this like Contra, you're going to see the game over screen faster than you can blink. Another World, Out of This World, 1991. If Flashback is the polished blockbuster, Another World is the indie masterpiece that paved the way. Created by Eric Chahi, this game runs on the philosophy of show, don't tell. There is no HUD, no dialogue, and no instructions. Lester is a scientist who gets zapped into a hostile alien world after a lightning strike hits his particle accelerator. I'll be totally honest, the first 30 seconds of this game killed me more times than I care to admit. Those little black slugs on the ground? Lethal. The shadowy beast? Terrifying. And that's the beauty of it. It's a series of logic puzzles disguised as an action game. The bond you form with your alien cellmate is one of the most touching narratives in gaming history, and they don't say a word to each other. Heart of Darkness, 1998. This game was in development hell for years, and then it finally launched in 1998. We play as Andy, a kid who goes to the Darklands to rescue his dog Whiskey. What struck me most about Heart of Darkness was the contrast between its cartoon aesthetic and its horrible death animations. You'll see Andy getting snatched out of the air by a shadow creature and think, wait, is this allowed in a kid's game? Apart from everything, you'll remember your playthrough of Heart of Darkness, a solid 8 out of 10. Blackthorn, 1994. Before they were making billions with World of Warcraft, Blizzard gave us Blackthorn. This is what happens when you take the Prince of Persia template and fuse it with 90s heavy metal. In Blackthorn, Kyle is a mercenary who returns to his home planet of Tool to reclaim his throne. The mechanic that blew my mind back then is the blind fire. You could actually press a button to have Kyle fire his shotgun behind his back without looking. Kyle has a lot of aura for sure. You've had to wait for enemies to reload, pop out of cover, fire, and then duck back in. Yes, it's slower than you'd expect, plus the orc-like enemies are just gross enough to make blasting them feel very satisfying. I still think this is one of the most underrated titles in Blizzard's catalog. Bermuda Syndrome, 1995. Bermuda Syndrome looks a lot like Flashback, but it swaps the sci-fi corridors for a vibrant prehistoric jungle. You're a World War II pilot who crashes into a parallel dimension where dinosaurs roam and humans are stuck in a sort of tribal fantasy era. You'll appreciate how alive the world feels here. The screen-by-screen navigation is standard for the genre, and the background art is incredibly detailed. There's even a scene where you have to protect a princess from a giant dinosaur. It's a bit more point-and-click in its logic, but overall, I want you guys to play it. It's quite an experience. Heart of the Alien, 1994. This is the direct sequel to Another World. Now, in a brilliant twist, you don't play as Lester, you play as his alien friend, Buddy. This change in perspective shifts the gameplay significantly because Buddy is equipped with a multi-purpose whip, and I think the whip mechanic to be a double-edged sword. On one hand, using it to swing across pits and grab enemies is so satisfying. On the other hand, the timing is more demanding than the original game's laser pistol. Well, it's nice to see the events of the game from Buddy's eyes. Nosferatu, SNES 1994. If you're a fan of Castlevania but wish it had the physics of Prince of Persia, Nosferatu is your dream game. A young man named Kyle has to fight his way through a vampire's castle to save his girlfriend. Almost sounds like the plot of Mario, but okay, let's not focus on that. Instead of a sword or a gun, you use your fists. Kyle has a whole moveset of punches, kicks, and a sliding tackle. The traps are classic, your usual spikes, falling floors, stuff like that. But the gothic atmosphere and the bosses make it feel unique. I'll never forget the first time I faced the werewolf boss. The way it moved was genuinely unsettling for 16-bit hardware. Fiend Hunter, PC Engine CD, TurboGrafx CD, 1993. This is one of those if you know titles. Fiend Hunter takes the cinematic platforming formula and gives it some Japanese RPG flair. The game features full-motion video cutscenes, which were a big deal on the PC Engine CD. You play as a monster hunter in a fantasy setting, and while the movement still has a delayed feel, the character is much more agile. I really like the magic system here that lets you clear screens of enemies when things get crowded. Now, look, I'm telling you in advance it's a rare find, but if you can track it down, it's a good example of how different cultures interpreted the genre. Zorro, a cinematic action adventure, DOS 1995. They really leaned into the marketing with this one, didn't they? This game is basically Prince of Persia with a cape and a much better hat. You explore a series of Spanish villas and dungeons doing exactly what Zorro does best: humiliating guards and carving Z's into everything. The swordplay feels more tactical than the original rhythm. You can parry, lunge, and use the environment to your advantage. I remember one section where you have to swing on a chandelier to get past a group of guards. It felt like I was playing a movie. Good vibes overall. Death by Dark Shadows, DOS 1994. Death by Dark Shadows is an indie title where a world is covered in darkness, obviously, and you have to go through a series of lethal environments. It's rough around the edges, let's be real, and the animation isn't going to win any awards, but to my surprise, the level design is sophisticated. I found myself staring at a single screen for 10 minutes just trying to figure out which lever triggered which door and how I could get there before the spikes reset. I just know that I'll keep trying. That's what makes this one so addicting. Cruel World, DOS 1993. If you want a game that doesn't even hide being a clone, try Cruel World. In fact, many people at the time just described it as the other Prince of Persia. Well, instead of the Arabian Nights aesthetic, we have a different setting. I'll be honest, it's difficult. How difficult? The throw your keyboard across the room, difficult. The jumps are pixel perfect and the enemies are relentless. But there's a certain charm to its nihilism. If you've mastered the original Prince of Persia and want something that will test your muscle memory in a new setting, this is the one. Just don't say I didn't warn you about the difficulty spikes. Oddworld Abe's Odyssey 1997. Abe is probably the most famous descendant of the prince. When Oddworld hit the PlayStation, it took the cinematic platformer to a new level of interactivity. Jumping and climbing is cool, but for the first time, you're communicating. The game speak system, where you tell other Mudokons to follow you or wait, changed the way I thought about these games. I absolutely adore the weight of Abe's movement. When he runs, he has momentum, and when he stops, he skids, and the puzzles, they are some of the most diabolical ever put to disc. It's a masterpiece of a character-driven platforming. The Way, 2016. Fast forward to the modern era, and we have The Way. You play as a man grieving the loss of his wife who travels to an alien planet in hopes of finding a way to resurrect her. I think this story is surprisingly emotional for a platformer. As you explore the alien ruins, you're uncovering a tragic history that is similar to the protagonist's own grief. As for the game itself, it's more forgiving than the 90s games. Thank God for modern checkpoints. Lunark 2023. Lunark is the most recent game on this list, and I cannot stress enough how much it looks like a lost 90s classic. The story is your usual sci-fi rebellion plot, but it's the gameplay that kept me hooked. You have to look at a room, plan your route, and execute it with precision. Spoiler alert, it's a short game, but it's so packed with quality that I didn't mind it. If you want the old school feel without the old school frustration of 30-year-old hardware, Lunark is a must-play. The Eternal Castle Remastered 2019. So I'm ending with this one because it's maybe the most unique game on the list. The Eternal Castle Remastered claims to be, well, a remaster of a 1987 game that doesn't exist. The atmosphere is unlike anything else. It feels like a fever dream. It's a very experimental game, focusing more on vibes than on logical puzzles, so it can be confusing and punishing sometimes, but it's still, well, worth playing. It's amazing to see how one game could spawn so many incredible variations. What are your thoughts on these 15 insanely good 2D Prince of Persia clones that you need to play? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section down below. As always, you know what to do. Hit that like button, share, and subscribe if you haven't yet. A subscription is the best way to be updated on all our latest videos. This is John of Marvelous Gamers. I'll see you on the next video.